Islamic Arts Society is a Houston-based nonprofit which aims to celebrate the rich heritage of Islamic arts. By showcasing modern and traditional styles of this art form in Houston and in other cities, this organization has worked to promote cross-cultural mutual understanding in the U.S. and help to bring the broader American community together. Islamic Arts Society has had the privilege to work with Houston's premier arts and culture institutions, including the Asia Society, Museum of Fine Arts Houston, and Rice University's Bonyuk Institute of Religious Tolerance, to name a few. This year, the Society is honored and pleased to collaborate with the Jackson-based International Museum of Muslim Cultures to celebrate Islamic Heritage Month of 2021. As part of this collaboration, Islamic Arts Society is excited to present a workshop on Islamic geometric patterns by the very talented Paul Barchilon. Paul is a Colorado-based ceramic artist who's been fascinated by the complex patterns and the magnificent architecture of the Moorish era since childhood. Inspired by his travels to Morocco, Spain, Turkey, and India, he began an in-depth exploration of Islamic patterns. The intricate detail and complicated interlacing of geometric designs that he observed during his travels were a direct influence on Barchilon's ceramic artwork. He considers his work to be very traditional, whose patterns and motifs fit perfectly in the 1400-year continuum of geometric designs in Muslim lands. He has taught adults and children K through 12 extensively how to make these Islamic geometric patterns. Paul himself is of Jewish heritage and finds that this Islamic art form resonates with him more than anything else. He hopes that by showing this side of Islamic culture, he can help dispel Islamophobic stereotypes and argue artistically for a broader spirit of Semitic unity. We hope you enjoy this workshop and get a true appreciation of the beauty of Islamic geometric patterns.
Thanks for that great intro, Shaheen. Everybody, welcome to my studio. Very happy to be working with you today for this special presentation. I'm going to show you guys how to design some sample Islamic patterns. We're going to start out by dividing the circle into 6 and then 12. And at the end, I'll teach you how to make a very commonly found tile pattern all over the Islamic world that's in 8. So we have a lot of ground to cover, but it's all exciting stuff. You'll be able to watch this video again afterwards. We're streaming it right now, but it will be on the website for the museum, and you'll be able to watch it again later. So if you get lost or you're confused or something, don't worry, you'll be able to come back and go back over the material and pause the video whenever you like. That said, I developed this after teaching 7th graders for many, many years in the public schools, so I try to go at a pacing that everybody will be able to follow along with. I'm going to start by showing you some examples of Islamic art from my own work, my ceramics, and you can see some of the ways that these patterns interact with each other, and then we'll dive into the drawing. This is one of my tile patterns. A star that is divided into 12 sits in the center of the hexagon, and at the edges these will form 9-sided stars. So when you tile it together, we get alternating 9 and 12-sided stars. This is one of my platters. This pattern is divided into both 14 and 12, tricky math there, and then the lines are outlined in white gold. This platter I spent over 40 hours painting by hand. It uses what are called gira shapes, which are a 5-fold design system from Iran and Central Asia that allows you to create all sorts of interesting combinations and make beautiful repetitions with radial symmetry. Very interesting design scheme. Here's a smaller plate that uses the gira shapes as little stamps that I've embedded into the clay to create another level of the patterning in the depth of the glaze. A really wonderful sort of translucent effect that comes through that. And here's another plate that uses the same set of Gira stamps to create a totally different pattern going on. So this is part of the great fun of this tiling system, is that there's so many varieties and different kinds of ways that you can use components of pattern to create beautiful, larger scale pieces. This is another one of my tile pieces, and I have a number of them together so you can see how they repeat. This is the same pattern that was in that platter. It has both 14 and 12 going on, and you can see how this looks in a tile installation. So I love playing with these patterns in lots of different formats, and today I'm going to teach you how to draw some patterns. Let's start by talking a little bit about compasses. You can use any kind of compass. This kind is particularly good. It's called a spring bow compass. It has a little dial here that you can adjust the length of the legs, and it's very precise. You can use much cheaper compasses as well and still get good results. You just have to be a lot more careful and a lot more precise. But you know, if you have $10 or $15 and you want to get a better compass, you'll definitely enjoy the results that you can get with it. Let's go to 2 inches here. So you just put the metal point on 0, and we're going to put the pencil part here at 2. Okay, that's called a radius, the distance between the 2 points on the compass. If you happen to have 11 by 17 paper at home, go ahead and set your compass on 3 inches instead of 2 inches. It'll be easier to do this drawing at a larger scale. Okay, so you notice it was pretty easy for me to draw the circle here. There's a trick to it. So the trick is press firmly on the metal point, but let this side just drag, okay? So if your pencil skips and stutters around and you have problems drawing the line, it's because you're pressing too hard. And if you press harder, you'll just make a hole in the paper. It doesn't help. So what you want to do is let this side be loose, okay? And then you can just twirl around like that. You don't have to go all the way around at once. You can pick up and come back on the other side. As long as you keep the metal point in firmly, you can move the compass around and you won't lose your dimension, okay? If you pick it up even for a second though, you're lost, okay? And then unless you can get right back on the exact same spot, you'll have a problem. Okay, so once I've drawn my circle here, now I'm going to take the compass and I can go anywhere on the edge. It doesn't matter where, but I need to be right on the line. So not here, that's inside the circle, not here, that's outside the circle, but right here, right where it crosses the line. Again, it could also be here or here or here. It doesn't matter, but it always has to be on the line. So I'm going to go right on the line there, and I'm going to draw a second circle, okay? And this gives us the overlap of 2 circles. This is the first of several geometric constructions that are very important. It's called the Vesica Piscis, which means fish shape. This is the fish shape, and it looks kind of like a fish. Here's the head and here's the tail, or vice versa. And that's a Latin term, Vesica Piscis, but I like how it looks like it sounds, the fish shape. So from here, we're going to take our compass and we're going to go to either the head or the tail of the fish, doesn't matter. Again, exactly where the 2 points cross. Not here, that's outside, not here, that's inside. Right where the 2 lines cross, draw a third circle, okay? Now we have 3 circles overlapping each other, kind of looks like a Venn diagram, or like the biohazard symbol. And now we'll go to the next point along here. So let's start with the compass at 2.5 inches, and let's put it right about in the center here. Start with a circle. Each time we begin by doing the same thing. So I go right to the edge, and I'm going to make a mark in each direction. So it looks like we're doing the same thing again, but we're building in complexity each time. So we're going to do this all the way around the circle again, get our initial division into 6. Okay, and from here we want to get our division into 12. So the way to do that is to take the compass on one of these points, and we're going to mark out in space out here. So for example, make a space here, then I come to this next point and mark back. And see how we form a larger X that's on the outside of the circle? That's the tip of the fish shape on the outside from the circle drawing that we did. I can keep the compass here, flip around, mark again, come to this point, mark back, do this all the way around. If you go off the edge of the paper and you're not able to make your X, there's a very easy way to fix that. So it turns out that anywhere that's more than halfway will work. So this is about the halfway point. So I can make my compass smaller here. And as long as I'm more than halfway across the circle, it'll work. And what that does is it moves the X closer to the edge of the circle. And this point will line up exactly through the center point there as well. So you can use this size all the way around. You can use either of these sizes, it doesn't matter. So once we've completed this, we have a series of X's on the outside of the circle. And now I'm going to take my compass, or sorry, not my compass, my ruler, and I'm going to line up through the center and through both X's on opposite sides. And we're just going to make a little mark on the edge of the paper here, on the edge of the circle. I'll do this in all of the orientations. So again, X's on opposite sides of the circle, always through the center. And we're going to make a little mark. And we'll do this in our final orientation here. Okay, and we now have our division into 12. So let's go ahead and number. We can put 1 up at the top here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Notice we're numbering both the X's and the marks, and that it looks like a lot like a clock, right? This division into 12 is part of why so many things in our culture are divided into 12, because this is one of the easiest ways to measure things once you start working with the compass. So now that we've done that, we can start making really exciting patterns. There's just a window of possibilities that open up that's virtually limitless for what you can do inside of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a pattern by connecting every fourth point on the inside of the circle here. So when I say 4, this is what I mean. I'll put my finger here and call it 0. I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to draw from 1 to 5. You can also think of it as adding 1 plus 4 equals 5. Go ahead and draw in that line. And now always do it in order. So we started from 1 and we went to 5. So next we'll start from 2. Don't try to go from 5 next. You'll get confused. So just go from 2. And again, you can add 4, which is 6. Or you can simply just rotate. You don't even need to count, right? You can just do the next 2 numbers in sequence all the way around. And this is only good for so long because it starts to get to be an uncomfortable angle for your hand to hold. But the solution is really simple. Just rotate the piece of paper so that you've got a more natural angle, and then you can turn your hand to follow the line. So 5 and 9 are the next 2 points for me, and then 6 and 10. Again, I'll rotate. So that's going to be 7 and 11. Here we'll go to 8 to 12. And then we'll go from 9 to 1. Ten to 2. 11 to 3. And 12 connects back to 4. So this is the pattern that we create. So our first Islamic star pattern that pops up in there, and a very beautiful shape just in and of itself. And we can actually create all sorts of amazing patterns in that. So let me show you how that works first, and then we'll come back in and show some other things we can do with the drawing. So check this out. This is the pattern that we just drew, made by connecting every fourth point along the lines. Well, it turns out that if we connect a different number, say every fifth point instead, we get a totally different pattern. So this is kind of the magic of where Islamic geometry begins. As soon as you can divide the circle into 12, there's all of these different patterns that are possible that can be made just by connecting different numbers. Now, you can also do composite patterns. So remember, we can overlap like this, right? And we get a really complicated thing in the middle. Or remember when we were in 6, we doubled to 12, right? So why not double and get to 24, like this, for example. So you start to get the idea that, like snowflakes, as soon as you start playing with this, there's actually an infinite range of options that are available inside of the circle. We can also do composite ones. Here, for example, this was made by taking alternating thirds and every second and then repeating that on the inside as well. So we got a second layer of pattern going on. And with this one, I made a pattern of 5-sided stars that are dancing around the circle. So we started out in 12, but somehow we ended up with 5-sided stars. It's kind of wonderful. And of course, 5 times 12 is 60, which is the number of minutes in the hour. So again, we see these correlations with things in our cultures that are based upon these kinds of numbers. Let's take a look at what happens when we do some of these overlaps. So for example, here, we get a lovely pattern just like this, right? And then we can actually rotate to a slightly different angle to, again, get a different pattern inside of that. Or I can combine these two to make a lovely pattern there. And again, there's another version of this pattern simply by changing the angle that things are repeating at. This is a particularly nice combination. So as soon as we start dividing, we have all sorts of magic that can be done here. And here, let's see what that one looks like. Very cool. So lots of fun to be experimented with and explored. Okay, so we have this division into 12, and we've made one shape here. As we just saw, there are all sorts of patterns that can be created here. Let's look at some of the ways that these things can start to work. So first, notice that on the inside of this shape, we again have a shape. It's a dodecagon, a 12-sided shape. Just like in the 6-sided star, we had a hexagon, there's a shape in here too. The key thing to note is these triangles, see that? We can make a little mark at the edges of all of these smallest triangles here. And these effectively form 12 new points on the circle. And we can use those 12 new points to create a secondary pattern on the inside here. Now, if you want to do the same number that we just did, you could repeat this pattern by connecting every 4th point. If you want to do every 5th point, you can do that. That's what I'm going to do. You can do every 3rd, every 2nd. You can pick any number that you want, and you'll get a pattern in there. I will say that once you go past the middle, you're simply repeating yourself. So for example, from here to here is every 5th point, right? And from here to here is across the middle, so that's the 6th. Here would be every 7th point, but that's the same thing as every 5th point. So you can't go past the middle, but all of the others will create unique combinations. So again, I put my finger here, that's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's my 5th point. And again, I have to do it in sequence. So I'm just going to rotate the piece of paper and do the next 2 points. I don't even need to number them because it's basically irrelevant. Just I went from here, so next I'll go from here. I ended here, so next I'll end here. So I simply rotate each time to create this pattern. And everything's good. You're not having any problem with this. And your phone goes off or there's a notification or something and you look up from your paper and when you come back to it, you're like, I have no idea where I am. Don't panic. You can find your way back easily. Just put your finger on a point. We're going to call that 0, okay? And again, I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now I'm back on track. And I can continue this the rest of the way around. So I'll just keep rotating here. And you'll see that we create every 5th inside of every 4th, which is cool. And then, of course, you can color this however you like. There's just no end of neat things that can be done with these. Okay, so there we go. That is the pattern that's made with every fifth point inside of every fourth point. Notice as you get smaller, you become less accurate. This is just a function of being human, and your scale gets a little off. Anytime you're off by just a tiny, tiny fraction from any of the points, this sort of magnifies as you get smaller. One simple solution to this problem is to work on a much larger scale. That's why I was saying earlier, if you've got 11 by 17 paper, that works great, or even 14 by 17 or 12 by 18. The larger you go, the easier it is to do an accurate drawing. So when you're working on a much larger scale, you can create much more complexity. Okay, so there's all of these cool things just with this pattern. You can do a different number than I did. You can do the same number. You can also do overlapping numbers on top of each other, which makes a really nice effect. So here's one. This is a nice example. So I started out just as we did, right? I connected every fourth point to get 1 to 5. And then on the inside of that, I made another drawing here. This time I did every fourth point on the inside of that pattern to create a new design in there. Let's see what happened here. So here I connected every third point, which is 1 to 4. So if you look, you can actually see that there's a bunch of squares here actually. So this pattern is made out of 3 squares. And again, 3 times 4 is 12. So we're back to our magic number there again because we've divided into 12. From there, let's look at this internal circle and see what we did. From here, that's 0. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's every fourth point on the inside, okay? So I did every third point on the outside and then every fourth point on the inside. Here's an example of doing something more complicated. This is in interlace, which is something that we see all throughout Islamic pattern, these beautiful lines that weave in and out. Unfortunately, that's a little more complicated than I have enough time to show you today. But if you want to start working with some of these patterns, you'll learn different ways to do it. And there's lots of tutorials and lessons online, many of them available for free, that you can learn how to do some of this stuff. Here's another example of a pattern. So playing with all sorts of different options here and creating different shapes, and how you color them can help you bring out different shapes. So that's part of the fun and part of the magic of doing this. So now that you can divide into 12, there's all these different patterns that you can create from there. Okay, by now you are experts at dividing into 12. So let's go ahead and make our circle a little bigger now. I'm going to put it on 3 inches and make sure you're in the center or you'll have some difficulty here. So we'll do a nice big circle in the middle of the piece of paper. And again, we're going to do the same thing that we've been doing. We simply go to each point and we're going to mark in each direction. I'm going to do this a little quicker now since we've done it several times here. So we get our initial division into 6, and then we're going to need our division into 12. Because the circle is so big on the piece of paper here, we're going to find that a lot of our lines are not going to line up. Are going to run into the edge. So for example, here we're going to come off the edge where we want. So I'm just going to start by making the compass a little smaller, again, less than halfway. Right? So we can go here, and let's see how we did here. Here my lines are a little off. I was slightly off on my measurement. When that happens, just pick the point between them that you're going to use. So I'll do that, and I can mark over on this side. And just barely on the edge of the piece of paper there. So we'll do this all the way around. It didn't quite touch there, so I just go back and draw the line a little further. Okay, so there's our division into 12 again, and again we'll take the ruler, line up through the center and both sides. So let's do a compound drawing this time. We can do a series of lines. I'll go ahead and number them again. Okay, so let's do, I don't know, let's start with 1 to 4. So every third line here. So I'm going to pick that middle point between my two marks there for greatest accuracy. All right, so I'm going to start by just doing that set of lines around there. This time my number is 3, so 4 to 7, 5 to 8. This is going to create a shallower one. 6 to 9. 7 to 10. 8 to 11. 9 to 12 here. 10 goes back to 1. Let's take 11 to 2. And 12 goes to 3. Okay, so there's one set of lines. So now what we're going to do is we're going to overlay a second set of lines on top of that to create a compound pattern. Okay, so we did 1 to 4 last time. Let's do something else. Let's do, how about 1 to 6? So I'm going to line up between 1 and 6. And now this is where it starts to get confusing. So remember I said to do things in order. So I started from 1, right? So next I'll go from 2, right? So we'll just do 2 to 7. So 5 is the number I'm doing here. Three to 8 there. 4 to 9. 5 to 10. 6 to 11. So you can see this starts to get a little complicated, which is why it's important to be sequential. Okay, and so now you'll notice that from each point we have 4 lines coming out, right? So you can start to color things from those spaces and pick different shapes that you like. So look for things that you find interesting in there. So for example, maybe you decide that you like this dart shape right here. So you could color that in. And if you're confused about how to color, especially as your pattern becomes more complicated, you can start by picking out a shape. So for example, since I've done this shape, let's do that same shape. So basically this dart, note that I'm crossing 3 different areas to create that dart. So I'm going to do that all the way around here so I can fill the entire piece in with that dart. Right, and then you can pick a second level of shape after you've completed all of those. So now we're going to do a pattern that's in 8 actually. So we're going to change a little bit what we're doing. Instead of starting with the circle, we're going to start with a line. So assuming you're working on 8.5 by 11, let's go ahead and draw a line right across the middle of the piece of paper. You can go all the way through like that. Okay. And now what I want to do, let's mark the middle first. So let's go for 5.5. We'll be right at the middle here. And we can take our compass and let's put this on 3 inches actually. So let's go in our center point there and go ahead and draw a circle here. Okay, so we have a line and we have 2 points, 2 horizontal points on the line that are hit by this circle here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the compass and I'm going to go to the right-hand edge. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger than the middle. It doesn't need to be too much, just a bit. So for example, like this. And I'm going to make a little mark here and here. And then I'll pick the compass up and go to the other side. Make a little mark here and here. So it's just like those fish shapes that we were making, those X's. Now I can put my compass here. I'll line up through the center and through both fish points, and I'll go ahead and make a line right there. Okay, so that line is at a right angle, okay? So we've divided the circle into 4. While we're here, let's go ahead and erase the fish lines that we made because we're not going to need them. Okay, so we're into 4. If we want to get into 8, we can do 2 things simultaneously. Let's go back to the radius of the circle, so get exactly to where you were. And let's make sure we line up and that we're drawing a circle that's the same size. You can check multiple points. Looks good. And now we're going to come to this point on the right-hand side, and I'm going to mark up in space here. And while I'm here, I'll also mark down below. So again, we're making those X's in space. Now I go to the bottom point here. Going to mark again. And then I'll stay here, flip over, mark on this side. Come back to here, mark, and up at the top as well. And one more. Need over here for where this crosses. Okay, so those 4 points have done 2 things for us. One is we actually have divided the circle into 8, which is useful for generating patterns. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a line all the way through the center again. And same thing here. Okay, so we've got a pie that's divided into 8 basically. We also have a square because these points here that are taken from the radius of the circle actually create a square that perfectly encompasses the circle. So if you line up on those points where those X's are, you'll find that they all align with each other. And they are in tangent to the circle, which means they're touching the edge. Okay, so here's our square. Okay, now I think I'm actually going to erase this circle because we have other things that we want to put inside here. So we just have a square that's divided. These kinds of erasers are really useful. It's like an eraser pencil, basically. They're great for Islamic geometry because we have lots of erasing to do often. Okay, so now that we've got our square, we can actually use the other dimensions that we have to figure out everything else that we need. So let's go on the diagonal here, and we can line up this smaller quarter size here, right? So now we have an X in this square that's on the right-hand side. And let's do the same over here. So we have 4 squares that are subdivided into with x's each one. And now we can take our compass and let's go right where these 2 lines cross, okay? And what we want to do is we want to adjust the compass to come into tangent with the lines. So again, tangent means to touch, and we can check because it's got 4 sides it needs to touch. So let's make sure that we're touching all 4. Looks pretty good. So I'm going to draw a circle there. That circle should be the same size over here. Let's see. So we'll do another circle here. Same on this side. And we need this one also. So each circle should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points. Let's make sure we did it on all of them. Looks like it. We got everybody this time. Okay, that's all the information we need to complete the pattern. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to line up my ruler here, and I'm going to go to this point. You'll notice it also hits this point, right? So we can actually do all 4 of these at once. I think it might confuse you if I do that though, so I'm just going to do one. I'm going to mark here. I'm going to make a square that sits inside this circle. So we're going to line up so those points that we just made in this upper right-hand circle. Oops. And we're creating a square inside of there. Okay, now notice these points here that are going to the corners, they also touch the circle. So it's where it touches the circle that I'm concerned about. So I'm going to mark those just so you can see them here, right? And I'm going to make another square, right? So when we did the 6-sided star, we had 2 triangles overlapped. Now we're going to have 2 squares that overlap. Let's go here, here. So I'm just lining up where the line crosses the circle, where the diagonals cross this smaller circle on the inside. Okay, so we've now made this shape that is a very common shape that is made by 2 squares that are overlapping with each other. In Morocco, we call this shape Katam Soliman. So it's like the Solomon seal. So I kind of like that idea. So we have a cool thing going on here, making a lovely pattern just like that. Now, what's interesting is that we actually have all the information and all of the lines for all of the other patterns. Remember I said I didn't want to confuse you before. So there's one of these here and here also. So I'm going to line back up, and you'll now notice that this line actually goes all the way through. So I can do that all the way through, right? And let's go along the top here and do this. So we want to do this square right here. So I'll draw in that line. Let's complete this square while we're on it. So it'd be from here to here, but we'll notice that that is also going to complete the bottom square at the same time. So I can draw the whole line at once. And now we need this side of the line, but that also is this part of the line, and it's also the line below it. So it's always nice, you know, your drawing is accurate when your ruler lines up through all 4 points at once. Okay? So again, we have this, and let's do this one. And this line also goes through all 4. We already have the top part, but we need this side down. Right? And who's our last one that we're missing? Is right here. And at this point, you're probably just thinking, wow, there's a whole lot of lines here, and we're not too sure what's going on. We're going to do the same thing that we did over here, though. We're going to make another square, right? So again, I can take these points, right? So it's where the circle hits the diagonal line, right? And I can line up here. And I'll go ahead and draw that line. I'm just going to do the square this time. Okay, so we have now got all of the pieces for the pattern. It's just a little confusing though, because we don't actually see what we have. So I'm going to color it in so that you can see what goes on here. So we're going to do the inside area of both squares, right? So I can start here. Inside a hexagon, so you can actually tile hexagons also, and if you made a pattern in 12 inside the hexagon and put the pieces together, you would be able to tile that. So lots of fun to explore. This is just a very brief introductory course to some of these basic things. If you're interested in learning more, there are a lot of resources online. I definitely recommend the classes from artofislamicpattern.com. Excellent tutorials for all levels, going very in depth and analyzing a great deal of traditional patterns from Islamic cultures all over the world. And the classes are very reasonably priced, so I definitely recommend checking those out. And if you want to learn more, there's a whole world to be uncovered there. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure presenting for you, and I hope you were able to create some beautiful things today. Just for fun, I went and tiled a bunch of these together so you could see what it looks like. If you'd like to see more of my work, please feel free to visit me on my website at barchilonceramics.com. I have lots of my platters and vases, and I also have an Etsy page where you can see a lot of my work that is linked from my website. And here's the webpage for artofislamicpattern.com. You can start with any of these, but the beginning series are much easier. And if you like to learn from books, this is a clear, simple introduction to a number of patterns from Eric Bruggen. You can get this book easily for very little.